arterial noises you hear through a stethoscope when you go through when you measure blood pressure? Cough sounds. Number 2, which term describes a significantly faster normal heart rate? Tachycardia. Number 3, what type of vessel is this? Is it an artery, a capillary, or a vein? It's an artery. What artery is that? Popliteal. That wasn't the question, it was just artery. That's not the question. It's just asking for artery. I mean, I'll count it. I'm just saying that's like, we weren't asking for popliteal. We were asking, is it an artery or a capillary?
What if you put both?
That's fine. I know that you're saying that it's an artery. I'm just saying that, like, I'm not asking for popliteal. Okay. Number 4. What layer is this? Tunica intima. Number 5 was asking the tissue type. So what layer is this? Tunica media. What tissue makes up the tunica media? Smooth muscle. Number 6 is identify C, which is right here. It is the right external iliac. So remember that you have the abdominal aorta. The abdominal aorta splits into the common iliac. The common iliac then splits into external and internal. Branching matters, okay? So if the sticker were up here, it would be the common. Because it was pointing after it branched, it's the external. Does that make sense? Okay, this over here would have been internal. So the answer is right external iliac. Number 7 is identify this vessel right here.
Left subclavian vein.
The left subclavian vein. Okay, so if you look here, it says you must include right or left and artery or vein. So you have to have 3 components to like each answer: right or left, the name of the vessel, and then artery or vein. Okay. Number 8 was pointing, I'm not going to lift it up, to the artery up here. What was this? It was the brachiocephalic trunk. So if you look at it, you can see that there's the aortic arch coming off the heart, and there are 3 little branches coming off. It was pinned in that first branch. Okay, so last week when I said, hey guys, you should look at the rat, and then everybody left. Yeah, you're seeing that you shouldn't have left. You need to look at these dissections. They will kill you on this exam if you don't study the rat. Okay, so that was number 8. Number 9, what is this vessel pointing to in the groin area? This is the left common iliac vein. Okay, so it's pointing to the blue. So this right here was the right external. This over here is the left common iliac. Okay, and this is a vein. Number 10, if you were asked to find your radial pulse, where would you place your fingers?
Wrist.
The wrist.
On your wrist, right here. Specifically the lateral wrist, but I'll take wrist. Okay, make sure you know where the 7 common pulse points are. Okay, any questions on this quiz? Yeah.
For the left subclavian vein, I guess I put axillary because where would axillary be? Because I got a little.
It would be in like the armpits. It would be like more further down.
It would have been further down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I tried to put it as close to like where it split as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I were to like put it like right here on the edge, then that would be like axillary right there.
Got it. Okay.
Or most likely I would put it right here before it branched into
Okay.
these right here. All right. So today it says that we're supposed to finish blood vessels, but we already did. So we're just gonna go through the lymphatics. I'm gonna do this one. The lymphatic system.
Oh, wow. I studied a lot. And I failed. I studied a lot.
Okay, so this is on page 101.
I should have stopped it. I studied a lot. Oh my goodness. This is setting the one to drop out. Did it?
Okay, so starting with the lymphatic vessels on, like I said, page 101. On here, as far as function of the the vessels, you just need to know where it's draining lymph to. So you just need to basically know the order. So we start with lymphatic capillaries. Then, as we said in lecture, the capillaries get bigger and turn into the collecting vessels. The collecting vessels become bigger and turn into the trunks, which get bigger and turn into the ducts. And then it goes into the subclavian vein. So okay, so on here, basically you just need to know where the fluid is coming from and where it goes to, okay? So the lymphatic capillaries is where lymph is formed, right? Because before it gets into the capillaries, it's called interstitial fluid, so it's not even the same thing. So this is where lymph is actually formed, okay? From there, the lymph flows to the collecting vessels. The collecting vessels drain the fluid to the trunks. The trunks drain fluid to the ducts. The ducts drain fluid to the subclavian vein. So, like, the answer is it drains to the, like, next part. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you do have to, like, as far as models are concerned, lymphatic capillaries are microscopic. You cannot see them in the models because, again, they're microscopic. But here on these, on this model, okay, do you guys see all of these like white lines? They look like spider webs all over. And on the white lines, they have these yellow dots, okay? All of the white lines are representing your collecting vessels. And the yellow dots that you see are the lymph nodes on those lymphatic vessels, okay? So remember in lecture we said that you have the capillaries and then the collecting vessels, like which are where your lymph nodes are. That's what this is representing, okay? So if they point to this white thing here and they say identify this structure, it's a collecting vessel. If they point to the yellow thing and say identify the structure, it's a lymph node, okay? You don't have to identify any of the trunks, okay? But you do have to identify the ducts. So based from what we said in lecture, where do the ducts empty into?
Subclavian vein.
The subclavian, right where it junctions with the internal jugular, right? So if you look at this right here, this is the superior vena cava. So this right here is the subclavian. This is the internal jugular. See where it like makes a V right there? If you look closely, you can see that there's this white vessel literally dumping into that junction right there. That's the right lymphatic duct, okay? If you look on the left side, you can also see this is the right left internal jugular. Yes, and then this is the left subclavian over here. So you can see that dumping into that is the thoracic duct, okay? Now if you remember, I said that the thoracic duct doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It actually starts in the abdomen. Does anyone remember what that little sac was called? It's called the cisterna chyli. So if you look here, it's like, this is the liver, and you can see the vessels. Underneath it, if I kind of turn it this way, you can see that there's this white bulb right there in the back. This big bulge that you see right there is the cisterna chyli. Okay, so everything from the cisterna chyli leading up all the way to here, this big white like line that you see is all the thoracic duct. Okay, any questions on those structures?
What specific is the function for the cisterna?
It's like the beginning of the thoracic duct.
So it drains fluid into the thoracic duct.
Yes. Well, yes. Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, we said that all of these little yellow dots that you see were the lymph nodes. What we're going to do now is we're going to magnify a lymph node and look at the structures within it. And these models over here represent the different lymph nodes. So we'll look at this model in just a minute. Okay. So when you look at a lymph node, it has relatively like a bean shape to it. So you're going to see that there's kind of like an indentation on one side, like this, okay? And you're going to see that there are vessels going to be going into it. So the fluid is going in this direction, and it passes through this whole lymph node here and exits on this side out this vessel. Okay?
Is that the only exit?
Okay, so you have a bunch of entrances and only one exit from like this little indentation right here. Okay? So all of the vessels going into the lymph node are called afferent vessels. And all of the vessels, or like that one vessel coming out of it, is called the efferent vessel. Okay? So if you remember right here, we said that collecting vessels are where your lymph nodes are. So basically we're saying that this is a collecting vessel right here, and this is your lymph node, right? So if the fluid is going in this direction, before this vessel goes in, it's called the afferent. As it's coming out, it's called the efferent. It's the same collecting vessel, It's just a matter of, is it going in or is it coming out of that lymph node? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we're seeing here. So if we look at this right here, you guys see how there's like a little indentation down at the bottom right here? This indentation, that one vessel coming out of it is the efferent. All of these other vessels on like surrounding it are the afferent vessels. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let's look in the inside. This is especially, you don't really need to know this so much, well I guess you need to know it on the models, but you're gonna need to know it on the histology that we're gonna look at the tissue slides in just a minute. So first thing to notice is that there's a cortex and a medulla. Where would we find the cortex?
Outside.
On the outside, and then the medulla is on the inside, okay? So the cortex, which is this outer surface right here, is gonna be full, it's gonna be full of these little circles called lymphatic nodules, okay? So you're gonna see a little circle here, circle here, circle here. All of these little circles that you see on the outer surface, they're all called lymphatic or lymphoid nodules, okay? In lecture, towards the very end, remember how we said that the tissues can be either diffuse, like spread out, or concentrated, right? Like all in one spot. These are those concentrated spots of lymphatic tissue, okay? So these right here are represented by these pink circles that you see in here. Do you guys see those? Okay, so lymphoid nodules are these on the cortex. Now in the middle, notice there are no circles, right? Instead, you have kind of like this maze network. You guys know what a maze is, right? Where you go through it. So you're gonna have like this like random network of tissue right here. These are the sinusoids. Do you guys remember what type of capillary is a sinusoid?
They're white, right?
You're on the right track. They're
They're
what allows
spaced.
the largest things through,
Protein.
right?
Pro-
Proteins and cells, right? So that's important, it lets cells through. So as the fluid is going through, it comes in here, it's gonna pass in between. These two right here are full of B cells and T cells. So like if there's a bacteria that's passing through here, these two like cells or these clusters of cells are gonna try to kill that bacteria. Once it gets to this area right here, this is like where some macrophages are, okay? So macrophages like eat things. So as it passes through that maze, the macrophage is gonna try to eat whatever's left in here. So hopefully by the time it gets through the efferent, it's relatively clean. Does that make sense? Okay, so your lymphoid nodules are going to contain your lymphocytes to fight against the pathogens as it passes through in between there. Okay. All right, so we said that lymphoid nodules are in different organs, right? Here they're in the lymph node, we'll see them in the spleen, but if they're in the small intestine, they have a special name called Peyer's patches, okay? So lymphoid nodule and Peyer's patch, they are the same thing. We're just specifically designating the location is in the small intestine. So there's a model somewhere over here. These two are the same thing. It's just this one's older and this one's newer. So one's like brighter pink and one's white, but they're the same thing. So as we look at this right here, this entire model represents the wall of the small intestine. And they have asked that before. The question is, what does this entire model represent? The answer is small intestine, okay? Now, if we look at this, remember how we said that every hollow organ has layers? There's tunica intima, tunica media, tunica externa, right? In the digestive system, we'll see there are actually 4 layers, okay? The innermost layer is called the mucosa, which is this like layer right here. Do you guys see this bright green thing in that mucosa layer? This is that Peyer's patch, okay? So it is a lymphoid nodule. It's just, its proper name is a Peyer's patch because it's in the small intestine, okay?
So the little things going up, what are those? The ones next to it?
These are called villi.
Okay.
They're part of the, well, I'm glad you asked that.
Okay.
So the individual like folds like this, they're called villi. But do you guys see these green things inside each of the villi?
Mm-hmm.
These are lacteals. We heard that word today.
Yeah.
What is a lacteal?
It allows fat, absorption of fat.
We're tired.
It's a capillary bed specifically to absorb
Fat.
fats, okay? So if they point to this right here, it's a Peyer's patch. But if they point to these green things up here, these are lacteals for absorbing fats. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay. I think that's it for models. Let me make sure. Yes.
So you said that there's a cortex and a medulla.
Oh, and the medulla is all of the sinusoids in here. So all of this is medulla.
Okay.
And we'll see that in the histology when we get there too. Okay, so as far as the actual organs themselves, you need to be able to identify them on the models, especially like those torso guys right here. And models, and we'll look at some of the ones with the stars in the rat. So you need to know the thymus and spleen in the rat. So let's start with the thymus, okay? We should already know where this is located from the endocrine system. Remember we said that this is located in the thoracic cavity, right? We don't have any in the models, but you will see it in the fetal pig, and I think some of the rats have them. So what did we say the function of the thymus was? Like, what did thymosin do?
Immune system.
Build your immune.
Matured your lymphocytes, right? So that's the overall function of the thymus, is to mature lymphocytes. Okay? So it secretes a hormone for that whole entire purpose. Okay? Now, the spleen's function is not filtering lymph at all, okay? I want to point out that even though the spleen is part of this system, it has nothing to do with lymph. Its whole purpose is to filter blood, okay? So you want to fight against pathogens in your lymph. That's what your lymph nodes are for. You want to fight against pathogens in your blood. That's what your spleen is for. Now, where would you find your spleen? The upper left quadrant of your abdominal cavity. So if we're looking at these torso guys, you can see that this is the diaphragm right here. This pancake looking thing right here on the left side is your spleen. Same thing with this structure right here, okay? I want to point out that in a human, it looks like a disc, like a pancake. But if you look at the spleen in both the rat and the pig, it actually looks more like a tongue because it's like flat and long. So it's still smooth, it just has a little bit of a different appearance in the dissections, okay? So it filters blood. Now, the tonsils, these are clusters, these are like the exact same lymph like nodules, but they're just randomly in your throat. Okay, so it's not like they're like encapsulated. They're not forming their whole organ. Like you won't be able to like see an organ. It's just clusters of this tissue in your like throat nose area. Okay, so in the sagittal head model, which is so on these two models right here, you're going to be able to see the different tonsils. So where is your pharynx? It's in your throat, okay? So think about the word pharyngeal tonsil. It's going to be in your pharynx. So if we look at this right here, can you guys see how like this is like the mouth right here, this is the nose up here, like the nasal cavity, oral cavity. So this is like your throat. This tube back here is specifically your pharynx. And there's an orange dot inside that tube right there. That is your pharyngeal tonsil. Okay? Now the palatine tonsil, where's your palate? It's like the roof of your mouth, right? But the roof of your mouth forms an arch like this, right? So if you look at the arch, you'll actually see them on the ends of the arch. So it's not the roof, it's like on the walls, like right here and here. So do you guys see how, actually, I said that wrong, I'm sorry. This right here is actually your pharyngeal tonsil in your pharynx, because it's part of like the throat, and that's actually your palatine. Sorry.
The dot?
Yeah, the dot is the palatine, sorry, and the pharyngeal is this one literally on the back of the pharynx. Okay? Now the word lingual means tongue. So if you look, this whole giant red thing is the tongue. Now you can't, like if you were to open your mouth and look in the mirror and your throat, you won't see it because it's so far in there. So if you follow this, you guys see how this is in the back, like the base of the tongue right here? This is the lingual tonsil. Okay? So you have the pharyngeal at the back of the pharynx, the palatine, like on the roof, like the side of the roof of the mouth, and then this is the lingual right here. So all three of those, since they're all tonsils, protect against ingested pathogens. What does that mean, ingested? Eating. So they're protecting against pathogens that you're eating. And it makes sense because they're all in like your throat. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on those?
That would be the function for all three of those?
Yes. It's just a matter of the different locations.
So they're not organs. When they say you're gonna take your tonsils out, what do they mean?
They remove like clusters of tissue in that area because like it's not like they're encapsulated, like you can't like look at it and say, yep, there's the heart. You can't like pick it up, you know? So they basically just kind of scrape that area and remove those tissues. Okay, the appendix, its only function in life is to hold good bacteria, okay? Like, it doesn't really do anything anymore. It's called vestigial because it's lost its old functions. So its only thing is that it holds good bacteria, so bad bacteria can't invade. Now, you'll find this in the lower right quadrant of your abdomen attached to the cecum. So if we're looking at this right here, this is like your small intestine, right? If we remove that, this is your large intestine right here, and you can see that this is like the beginning of it, this pouch called the cecum. You guys see this green thing hanging down? Looks like a little finger. This is the appendix right here, okay? And I think it's only on this one. Oh, on this one, you can see that it's like this little tail thing hanging off right there as well, okay? I already talked about the lymphoid nodules, the Peyer's patches, and the lacteals. Any questions on the models? Okay, so if you guys want to grab a microscope, I'm gonna throw the slides on the projector. And so let's go through some histology.
The virus patch only in small intestine.
Yes.
I'll probably type
You
it
have
out so that way it
nodules
looks better because my
everywhere.
handwriting is bad.
But if it's in the intestine, it's Peyer's.
I wasn't writing.
So we're moving to page 102. And we're looking at box number 3, where it says spleen, lymph node, and ileum. So let's start with the spleen, which is going to be slide 16. Okay, so the first thing that I want to focus on is, remember we said in lecture that if the organ has its own capsule, it's its own lymphatic organ, right? If it has a capsule, it's considered a lymphatic organ. If it does not have a capsule, it's not a lymphatic organ, it's just some random lymphatic tissue, okay? So here, if we look at the surface, can you guys see this like band of pink right here?
Where?
I don't know if that's the projector or what. Is that gonna bother y'all?
Shaking.
You guys see it shaking?
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Sorry. Like, I'm looking at it from the side and it's like making me dizzy. Okay, sorry. So this little band of pink that you see at the top right here is the capsule. Okay, so it's considered an encapsulated organ. It is its own lymphatic organ. Now, what we can look at is this part right here. Do you guys see these dark purple patches?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think those dark purple patches are?
Red pulp.
Those are the lymphoid nodules. Okay, so remember we said that lymphoid nodules are everywhere in the body. The lymphoid nodules, specifically in the spleen, are these little purple patches right here. Now, remember how we said that lymphoid nodules are everywhere in the body, but they have a special name in the small intestine? They also have a special name in the spleen. In the spleen, it's specifically called white pulp. Okay, so white pulp and lymphatic nodules, they're the same thing. Okay, so it's gonna have the same functions as your lymphatic nodules, it's gonna fight your infections, okay? Now, all of the like little purple patches that you see are all of the white pulp. So this, that up there, all of this kind of lighter pink color surrounding it on the periphery is what we call your red pulp. So red pulp, what kind of cells do you think that this is going to be composed of? Red blood cells. Remember in lecture we said that the spleen is where your red blood cells go to die? All of that periphery is where your red blood cells are going to die.
Wait, are you talking about around the white pulp?
Yeah, so
Okay.
like if this right here, this purple spot is white pulp, and this is white pulp, and that's white pulp, all of this in between,
Oh, okay.
all of it, like everything in between, like if I move around, like all of this stuff that's not white pulp
Okay.
is red pulp. Okay? They're not going to ask you, I know splenic cords is in there, but you would have to go into really high magnification to see that. And